The Genshin Impact card game Genius Invocation is right around the corner and is set to release on December 7th. This new game mode is honestly huge for Genshin and will provide not only replayability, but also a massive amount of new things to explore within Teyvat. I know a lot of people are probably new to card games. In fact, for some of you this might be your first card game, so I'm here to help you gain a better understanding of how this game works. I've competed professionally in card games for years, so with my help, you'll be a master duelist in no time. So be sure to subscribe as I'll be pumping out content for this and Genshin Impact very frequently. Before we dive into the rules, some of you are probably wondering just what this new TCG is. Genius Invocation is a card game founded in the desert of Sumeru. The game is surprisingly fleshed out and actually kind of gorgeous. Honestly, the card art is stunning. It's astonishing how much work they put into this. You'll be able to challenge a slew of NPCs as well as other players or even your friends in a competitive duel, allowing you to live out your dreams of being Yugimoto. On launch, there will be a handful of cards as well as NPCs to challenge, and from what it seems, there will be getting more updates in future patches. It seems like this game mode will be entirely optional. In fact, I think even downloading the assets for it is entirely your choice, so it's mostly just going to be for fun. I strongly suggest trying it out though, as so far it seems to be one of the most polished card games on the market, which is kind of wild considering it's just a for fun minigame. You'll unlock new cards by battling NPCs and some familiar faces within Genshin, and from what I understand, it'll give you tokens for winning these fights, and you can use these to get new cards. From the leaks, it seems that it'll take about a month to get every card, which personally, I'm not the biggest fan of time-gated content, but it could keep the meta fresh and will allow people to try new things. As I mentioned, the game is honestly pretty in-depth, and until I play it, I can only give you so much information, but today, let's take a look at the game's rules and a breakdown of the basic mechanics. A few days after the full release, be sure to check back here for a full breakdown on Genius Invocation. Really quickly before we start, I want to thank Super Idiot for their help and website over at genshincards.com. It has made making this video so much easier. And yes, that actually is his name. I'm not just insulting him, I promise. Thank you so much. You can find the link to the website in the description. Alright, let's get started on how to play Genius Invocation. In this game, your deck consists of 3 characters, which are characters from Genshin Impact. And you have 30 action cards. You can have 2 copies of a card in your deck, which means you can't really have more than 2 duplicates. There are 3 different types of cards, and I'm not sure if they have official names yet, but the community has taken to calling them support cards, event cards, and equipment cards. Support cards have effects that you can use, such as do this effect twice, use it once per turn. Event cards are one-time effects, and finally equipment cards are, well, things you equip to your characters. You'll start a game by either talking to an NPC to duel them, or inviting another player from your world to a PvP duel. I think there's also matchmaking, but I'm not certain about this, so you'll have to wait to find out. PvP duels currently have no rewards, but it's the closest thing we have to player versus player combat, so honestly, I'll take it. The general goal of the game is to defeat your opponent's party by defeating all of their party members using your own, and the cards from your deck. At the start of the game, both players draw 5 cards, forming their starting hand. Immediately after, both players will have the option to swap out any numbers of cards from their hand with random ones from their deck. In card games, this is known as the mulligan phase, and it's an integral part of every game. After this phase, both players will get to choose one of their character cards to define as their active character. From what I get, this character will be the one they use to fight, and you can change your active character by using 1 die. Now this is where the game really starts. Players have begun to break down the game into 3 phases: the roll phase, the action phase, and the end phase. At the start of the first phase, both players will roll 8 dice. Each side represents one of the game's elements, and there's also an 8th Omni die, which can be any element that you desire. After rolling, you'll get the option to mulligan any amount of dice, re-rolling it a single time. Cards will cost elemental die to play, as well as most of your other actions will, so you want to make sure that you have a good amount of elements for flexibility. Next up is the action phase. This is where the gameplay actually begins. There are quite a few different things here within the action phase, so let's just quickly go over each of them. Each turn you're going to have multiple options. To use a skill, which will let you use your active character's skills for the cost of die. Switch characters, which again, at the cost of 1 elemental die of your choice, you can switch your active character from A to B or C. Play a card, which you could probably figure out what that means, I hope. Elemental tuning, which allows you to discard a card from your hand to change one of your elemental die into an element of your choice. And finally, declare round end, which ends the round. The person who ends their round first gains initiative, which means that going to the next round, they will go first and they will be the first one to take an action. It's important to note there's a distinction between turns and rounds here. There are multiple turns per action phase, as you and your opponent are continuously passing back and forth. If you take a turn, you play a card, your opponent will then be able to play a card, so on and so forth. Last but not least is finally the end phase. When both players end their turn, nothing really happens here, the turn just ends. But some cards will have end turn effects that can trigger here. For example, maybe you have a card that says at the end of the turn, or end of the phase rather, deal 2 damage. This will proc here, all of them will go off. Also, interestingly enough, at the end phase, both players will draw 2 cards at the start of the new round. So you don't have to worry about running out of cards. Every turn you'll see 2 more, which can honestly help a lot. After this, you start over from the die roll and run back the 3 phases. You roll the die, take your turn, end the phase, continue until the game ends, which is when one of the players is left with no party member standing. Now I know I just gave you a pretty in-depth breakdown of the game's mechanics, but before we wrap up, there are a few more things I want to go over. As I mentioned, I plan on making a lot of content for this game, and I make a lot of Genshin content as is, so be sure to subscribe to stay informed and entertained. As a general rule, every character starts with 10 health and no shielding. Aside from the Stonehide Lava Churl, pronunciation, my bad, who starts with 8 health and 3 shield. All the active characters will have a different amount of total energy, which seems to be either 2 or 3. They gain energy by casting any skill, aside from their elemental burst, and characters will need full energy to cast their ultimate skill. Essentially, when you attack with a basic attack or an ability, you'll get energy, and this will let you use a bigger, finishing move. Finally, elemental reactions also make an appearance in Genius Invocation. These allow for more interesting situations to arise, and I'll quickly go over all of them. I'm not going to go into depth as to what they do, because honestly, it's a lot of information, and I don't really have the full picture here. Essentially, they all either increase your damage or add small effects, such as damage over time. Some of them let you hit multiple characters, and some of them even can freeze your opponent, deny their actions. The reactions that we currently see in game are Vaporize, Electrocharged, Frozen, Overloaded, Superconduct, Melt, Burning, Bloom, Quicken, Swirl, Crystallize. Whew, that's a lot. Honestly, the elemental reactions add such an insane layer of depth to the game, and I'm really excited to see how they balance it and how it affects the game. Most card games usually just have very basic I attack, you die mechanics, so something like this is very, very interesting. If you're interested in learning more about these elemental reactions, check out the spreadsheet I linked in the description below. There's a tab that goes over all of them, but honestly, it's a lot, so just bear in mind, it's a lot of reading. Genius Invocation comes out really soon, and I am so excited to see its release. As I mentioned, I love card games, and this one looks so good to me. There seems to be a lot of depth to the game, and as we play it, I'm sure it'll become a part of my everyday life. If you're excited to learn more about Genius Invocation, and if you're nearly as excited as I am to play it, I heavily suggest subscribing to the channel because I'll be making a ton of Genshin card content as well as TCG content. Let me know how you feel about Genius Invocation in the comments below. I reply to those. See you next time.